getting into that mind-body connection. So I used to start off talks saying, hey, how much do you think the mental game is? 50%, you do the whole hand raising thing,
Yeah.
60%, 70%, 80%, whatever it is.
hmm
And I've got to the point now where in my mind, performance is 100% mental and it's 100% physical. It's if you have that extra 10%, why wouldn't, right? So it's 100% mental, it's 100% physical because you're physically always there. Mentally, we're not always there. Sometimes we're checked out, but
Yeah.
we need to get there 100% mentally and 100% physically. And something kind of like you were talking about is I have this idea of who's in charge.
Yeah.
Who's in charge? The body always wants to be in charge because
Right.
you're always getting feedback from it, right? It's like, oh man, these squats, they burn. Just quit. No one's watching, right? Or, I mean, Sunday I went golfing, and at least 2 or 3 holes, every time I golf, my grip just leaves me. And when my grip leaves me, my mind, I'm like, I'm scared. I'm starting to doubt. I have no confidence of where this ball is going to go. And so the body will always try to lead. And anytime you let that body lead, it's a bad idea. So it's the mind is in charge. The mind tells the body what to do. So in those moments, just as an example, when I'm set up, I step away. I take a nice deep breath and I squeeze the club really, really tight, and then I totally relax. You just talked about that tension, right? And when you have that tension, you got jammed. It's because your muscles were so tight. Instead of like being quick, you were really jagged to the ball. So anyways, I step out, take a nice deep breath, and I say, okay, my grip does not have to be perfect. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to just let my grip settle on this club, and then I'm going to change my focus. Then I change it to my hips. Okay. What do my hips need to do here? Right. Because I know my hips are good. So I change my focus, and all of a sudden my hands just do what I've taught them to do thousands of times. Keyword, taught them to do it, right? You can't just walk in hoping that things all click together. Okay, what you practice is what'll happen in the game.
Yes.
Anyways, I know I'm going in a million different directions, but back to this point, if I allow my body to be in charge, it will take me in a million different directions. It is immature, but when my mind is in charge, okay, I regain my performance, or ownership of my performance is what I was trying to say. And so as an athlete, if your body is starting to talk to you, you need to take control with your mind and tell your body what to do rather than listen. Listen for injuries, yes, but don't listen for, it's going to tell you a lot of negatives. It's going to tell you a lot of negatives until you train your body to tell you positives back. But remember, the mind is in charge.
Yeah, along the lines of just what you're going through right there. And I know you're aligned with this, and something you said struck a chord. Literally, I just saw myself sitting in that classroom 11 years ago with Ken talking to us. And he said, people are truly obsessed with being comfortable and their body feeling good. And as we all know, I mean, there's very few days where that's the case. I mean, I can only remember a handful of days where I felt like I'm going out on a baseball field, my body feels great, and I'm ready to go. So I needed something else to help bring me along. If I relied based on how I was feeling, I'd be telling myself, oh man, I feel like, crap today. I can't perform at a high level. But then that's when my mind came into place, and I started to reel myself back in and start, I know it's a cliche saying, but being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And, if you can really slow your breathing, again, utilize those focal points is something I heavily relied on. I'd clear my mind, forget about how my body was feeling at the moment, and then go back to what you were discussing and just letting the mind take control of the body and reach into that muscle memory that we've created through all that repetition and practice.
Absolutely. I love it. And as you were talking, I was reminded in Ken Reviza's second book, Heads Up Baseball 2.0,
Yep.
He has a lot of interviews with the Cubs because he finished his career working with the Cubs and Joe Madden over there. And so he was talking with John Lester, and there's this picture of John Lester in the book, and he talked about, hey, rarely did I show up 100%. Actually, pretty much never. He said at most I was typically around 80 to 85%, and he called that his B game, right? So we have like our A game where we're like 190%. Our B game, this is like B, it's probably like, in the 80 to 75%, and then you have your C game and so on down the road. And he said, you got to get really good at coming with your B game. And that's just something you have to be okay with, because if you're relying on your A game to show up both mentally and physically, it's rarely going to happen. And so that's when you start making all these excuses for yourself of like, I wasn't feeling it, this or that. Instead of, talking about going to prom, dance with the one you brought. Yeah. Dance with the one you brought, because guess what? That's the one that showed up, which is awesome. Okay. Your A game might show up later in your limousine and sparkling in a sparkling dress or in a nice tuxedo, right? But guess what? Don't rely on that. So if I have my A game, fantastic. If I have my B game, show up like you have your A game, because it might show up. If you have your C game that day, maybe you're hobbled by a couple of injuries or something, show up with your best C game, right? If you have 70%, bring 100% of 70%. And guess what? It might show up, right? If you don't have your curveball in the first inning, guess what? By inning 3, it might be your best pitch. So don't give up on things just because it doesn't show up right away. And that goes back to that mind-body connection.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate you. I mean, again, for the viewers, just so they have an understanding, I was a major of psychology, but, I think the whole purpose of this was to, maybe shout out some of my ideas and then have you give that true clinical and connection to the mental game. And I just appreciate everything you've shared today so far. And it helps give me even more clarity on what I know and how I can organize it and focus on it a little bit more. So appreciate you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love it. And as we talk, that mind-body connection, again, it's words, right? The thoughts become phrases, the words become phrases and thoughts becomes actions. And so out of all that stuff, we can still show up with an A game mentally every single time. And that's, again, the exciting thing about the mental game, right? My body can feel terrible. I can be achy, sore, whatever it is. Maybe I got a strawberry on my knee. I've got a doubleheader today. But mentally, I can always show up. And that's the hardest part, is that I have to take ownership of my thought life, right? At the end of each email, I was dedicated to your thought life. And that's what it is I'm helping you, and Brandon's helping you gain ownership of your thoughts, because thoughts become things and things become action.